I was a member before I became a director in 1975. And I went to my first IA annual meeting in '75 as a voting delegate, and it impressed me, so I've been involved ever since.
I served as president for 16 years in 3 different stands.
Someplace along in high school, I got a driver's license, and my dad was a Farm Bureau member for insurance purposes, plus farm, and so I've become a member then. But
I grew up in Farm Bureau. My parents were longtime members of Farm Bureau, so I grew up going to the annual meetings and all that. When I started farming in 1972, there was a very active Young Leaders, or at that time it was called Young Farmers Program, of which my older brother was a member. And so I would say that that's when my interest in Farm Bureau was the strongest. I joined that organization, the Young Farmers, and it became a natural progression then to end up on the board of directors of White County Farm Bureau.
Probably about 1963. My granddad was president of the Farm Bureau. Glenn Burrows was president several years. And I come back to the farm in about 63, and Dwight Hill came, I believe it was Dwight, and wanted me to be in a young farmer discussion meet.
Honestly, I don't ever remember not being interested in being in Farm Bureau. When I was born, Dad was a county director, and Grandpa was on the IA board, district director, and it's just always been part of my life.
Probably back in the 70s sometime. I don't even remember when I joined.
Oh, it'd been a long time ago. I guess the 70s, early 70s maybe. Young leader wasn't involved too much with the young leaders, but they was pretty active. So I think I joined. And
Carlton Apple asked me to be. They were organizing the young farmer groups at that time, and he asked me to serve as chairman of that group. And I think I got to sit in on Farm Bureau board meetings even at that time. And so that was in the early 60s there. I don't know, a year or two after that, maybe he asked me.
I really didn't become interested being a Farm Bureau board member until Donnie Duval called me one night and said, "Hey, you want to be a board member?" And that was kind of how that started, and I don't remember what year that was.
But it was in this I'd say the middle 70s. And my dad had always been in Farm Bureau, and so that probably prompted some of it.
I got interested at a Farm Bureau, a young farmer gathering. Richard Winters and Ron Whitley approached me about running for director for Prairie at that time. I thought about it, and I'd never been part of Farm Bureau before that, so I hesitated for a while, but I finally decided I'd go ahead and do it. I served 8 years as a director then, and come up, Richard Winters decided he wanted to retire, so Ron Whitley and I can't remember the other committee members approached me to be president.
I always was aware of Farm Bureaus. I was always aware of Farm Bureau just because Dad was on the Farm Bureau board, and it was important to him, and he would go to annual meetings, and I thought that was kind of cool to go to Chicago and do that. But so I was always interested in Farm Bureau's legislative participation, the correlation between Farm Bureau and legislators in Springfield. Really become interested in Dwight Hill in the 70s, yeah, maybe early 70s, and Dwight would come out and talk to me, and we'd go squirrel hunting, and we'd talk about Farm Bureau. So I'd say my real interest started in the 70s.
I just started farming, and the reason I remember it quite well, that was my granddad was killed in a farming accident, and that afternoon he had a few acres of beans. He'd be done combining beans, and the fellow that helped him wasn't able to be there that day, wanted to know if I'd run the combine, and at that time I was, experiencing that enough at that age. and run that, and then that was the evening then when he went to put the combine in the shed, had his accident. So I'd always remember that, but he wanted me to be sure and get away in time to get to that discussion meet, and
Well, as far as committee goes, when you spend as much time with Farm Bureau that I did, you have the opportunity to serve on every one of the committees.
I went on Leaders to Washington, was on an action team, I've been on the activator, then vice president, president.
Well, there are several good ones. I guess really going, first time went to Chicago, I guess, for the annual meeting and seeing how everything was, the process of everything, how it worked.
That's been a while ago. Probably most of them, I would imagine.
Well, I guess the first committee I served on as an IA director was the Governmental Affairs, and we were involved in state and federal issues, and I had a real good teacher, Lynn Gardner. He was abreast with everything.
Well, there's so many. I guess the one that I am most impressed with would be the policy development process. I think until you're a part of that process, you don't really realize the amount of time and effort and thoughtful discussion that goes into the development of Farm Bureau policy.
I remember the marketing committee where we organized, and I was the chairman of that, and we organized a farmer merchant banquet at that time, and I remember with that, and probably through the years, probably most all committees, I'm sure, but I remember the marketing was one I remember the name of more. I think we probably had a finance committee that met and did a little bit of the preliminary finance book work, and there was always generally an officer nominating committee. I'm sure I served on that a time or two, and rotated through most all the committees probably at that time.
Participate. The main word is participate. And don't be afraid to volunteer. The more you volunteer, the more you get involved. And the more you're involved, the more you realize what's going on.
I guess back in the 70s and 80s, we had a women's committee. I did not serve on that one, but aside from that, I think I've served on every committee.
One of my favorite things we do in Farm Bureau here on the county level is the appreciation lunch, but one of my favorite memories was going to the Leaders to Washington out in D.C. Flying out there. I've been on board, I think, 6 weeks. I jumped on a plane, never been on a plane before in my life. Flew out there, and it's really interesting. We do a lot out there.
Following from local all the way up to state for the annual meeting and delegate sessions, and to see what Farm Bureau did for the membership, for the farm, for the business. So I guess going to Chicago for the annual meeting and seeing how it worked.
The big memory is when we took the stage out of this lower building. We had a big rainstorm. I got a call from the manager saying that we had water all over the basement. So we, as a board, we called the board members. We all come in here and took the stage out, and that's the way it is today.
I guess the most memorable thing that we had here in White County was when we used to have the membership drives and get out and work to recruit new members. It was always a highlight of the year.
The biggest moment in my legislative committee was Terry Bruce from Olney was running for Congress, and Glenn Pashard was running for Congress. And it just so happened Terry Bruce was in Pat's, my wife's, high school class, and Glenn Pichard was in mine. And as we went to Chicago, I voiced the idea on the bus that maybe we could get the two of them together at White County and have a debate between them. And it was kind of hashed out in Chicago with, and they said, well, there's no way those two won't challenge each other since they're joining districts because of population, and one of them is going to lose their job. And so Pat leaned on Terry and I leaned on, and you know, it happened. And we had a building full crowd.
I don't know as I have one particular favorite memory. There was a lot of fellowship in Farm Bureau at the time I was in there, and we enjoyed each other's fellowship with each other. And I was kind of started out serving. I was young enough when I was on the fell into the board that most of the gentlemen on there were a generation ahead of me, and I learned to communicate and to socialize with that age group of people. Still to this day, of course, I'm that like generation pretty near now, but I think that was one of the accomplishments or things that I picked up through Farm Bureau, had been able to communicate and work with that older group of people at that time.
I was very fortunate and most appreciative of being given the White County Distinguished Service Award last year. I was very touched by that, and I appreciate that a lot. But I guess as far as a favorite memory, it would probably be the close relationships that I've established over the years with my Farm Bureau involvement. On a local level, serving on the board with, good farmers, great people, also working with a talented and dedicated staff, not just on the local level, but also on the state level. So I would say it's the friendships and the relationships that I've developed that's my most fondest memory of Farm Bureau.
Being able to be the president when we had our 75th annual meeting here in the county. And I got to recognize my dad because he was the president back in the day. That was kind of cool.
Well, I had some awful good teachers like Carl Apple and Harold Stahl and different ones that kept us abreast of everything back before I became a director. And nothing but good memories. I get messages now from different ones that's passed away that I served with on the board. And that's sort of disheartening to learn that some of your friends has gone on and you're still here.
I'd go back to the mission statement. I don't know, I'll paraphrase the mission statement as I remember it, but I think it's serving the best interest of its members, increasing profitability, and enhancing the quality of life. I think that White County Farm Bureau has been effective in all three of those, through the overreaching legislative process, the local affairs process, the health and safety, the commodities and marketing. Throughout all of those activities and programs, I think that there has been an impact, a favorable impact to the agriculture in White County.
The co-ops were organized that the major oil companies always said they couldn't make money delivering fuel to the farm in a 5-gallon can. And so they organized the co-op, and then they learned, that developed it. And then after a few years, well, all of a sudden, your major companies realized there's something there, and they got back into the business.
I think a lot of people don't understand really what Farm Bureau does, and they've got somebody out there all the time trying to talk us up.
We all know that the more members we have, the bigger voice we have.
I think they've really worked for several things, trucking, sales tax on the farm machinery, and our inputs. They've really helped local out.
Unfortunately, I don't think most members realize the impact that White County Farm Bureau is having, much of it is you don't toot your own horn enough. Much of it is subtle. Sometimes it's not things that happen, but things that you keep from happening.
Our yield tour, I think it's important to most every farmer, even though we know it's not 100% accurate. It's the best gauge we have.
It's a good grassroots organization, has been for years, from the time, well, that was what it was organized for.
There wasn't, I don't think, as many issues as there is today. More important is, maybe not, ours was important, but today seems like it's the trying time, and just more to getting the Farm Bureau involved and making sure that the legislature does at least partly what we want done as a Farm Bureau.
It was kind of my idea to start having legislators come to the January meeting and have lunch with us, and I think that it continues maybe.
100 years ago, this was very much an agrarian society, and everyone was involved in farming. I think as the world has gotten smaller, Farm Bureau has had to get bigger. What happened in a county or in a county away didn't used to matter as much as it does now. Now what happens across the globe matters. So the scope of Farm Bureau has had to increase vastly during the different generations.
Well, it's a different world than what it used to be, with big agriculture concerns, more or less large farmers. That the small farmers don't stand a chance anymore, in my opinion. They're going to have to get big or get out, and that's sad.
I wouldn't say it's really the actual role of Farm Bureau as a broad area has changed over the generations. It's the thinking of agriculture has changed, but still it's the same general problems. It's just under a different name or a different umbrella, but I think it still services the same needs.
From where I started till now, it's just unreal, the difference. Seems like your board is more involved now than it was back then. It's a lot of the farmers at that time were just going to the meetings, just participating. They wasn't really, I see more, after going through the young farmers, I think a lot of these board members you got now started from Ridge Up, and that helped a lot, where we were just elected as, established farmers already.
I don't think the role has changed any. Maybe the people have changed and what they believe in and how they want to go about getting things done.
We've got a pretty young board, but I wish there was a lot more younger farmers interested in White County Farm Bureau.
Well, there's a lot of things that compete for your attention when you're a young farmer. I guess my message would be to get involved. I don't think that you will regret any of the time that you spend making it a better organization.
Get involved in Farm Bureau and all the other commodity organizations if you can.
They face a lot of problems today that we didn't face whenever I first started farming. $2,500 was probably the extent of investment I had in machinery. In 1953, I bought a used tractor for $1,250, and I had a 2-bottom plow and a disc and a cultivator, and borrowed a corn planter, and today that wouldn't be a drop in the bucket.
Something that all of us, and it doesn't have anything to do with Farm Bureau, if you're renting land, talk to your landlord. Talk to your landlord. As a future landlord, I want people that farm my farm to talk to me and tell me, And maybe we won't talk anything about how much rain we got or how much we didn't get, but I think a young farmer needs to learn that fact that the owner of the land wouldn't own it if he didn't have an interest, and so he wants to hear what you're doing.
Just being involved, whether you have a big say or you don't have a big say, I think it's helpful, and it's educational on your part, if nothing else, regardless of whether it's Farm Bureau or any of the other commodity organizations. Because you get to see the other person's point of view. And I think one of the things that stood out with me there, and it's not in Farm Bureau necessarily, but on the soybean board, I didn't realize that they don't have garlic and wheat in northern Illinois. Because me and another guy was talking to a gentleman that was from northern part of the state, and he didn't know what garlic was. That really surprised me. I thought everybody had garlic and wheat, but that's not the case. And he didn't want us to bring him any either.
Well, as a young farmer, they start from ground up and they get an idea of what's going on, and they get energized to where they really participate more than they used to, I think. We had a lot of times where the board was having a meeting where we were having a meeting. So it's just a lot different than it used to be.
One of the things that the younger generation, they don't commit to participate as much as did back then, and you've got to do that. And there's not near as many young farmers now. I remember back when we were in the young farmer committee, you'd have 20 or more that would actually be active participants, and you had, of course, more than that. Now then, I don't know whether you'd find 20 young farmers in one county, hardly anymore, you know, and then to get a group out of that wants to participate.
Join Farm Bureau, become involved, go to meetings, take the trips, and you'll learn how professional an organization Farm Bureau is.
The world is run by those who show up. And that's the way it is in any organization, and that's the way it is in Farm Bureau, whether it's on the local level, state level, or national level, I'm sure.
Enjoy your youth, because it doesn't take long to become an old farmer.
We had a lady said we didn't need farmers because we can go to Public or Walmart and buy our groceries. You don't have to depend on the farmers. And the Ag in the Classroom is doing a very good job at that. I'm really impressed with that. When it first started, I wasn't too for it, but the more I see what they're doing, the better it looks. I mean, it's really got people involved.
People just really don't realize how much knowledge is going away from kids in school. They really don't know, and it's not necessarily their fault. We have to teach them.
Because kids these days, I think, they go to Walmart and they see a steak and they said, well, that's where it was made at. And they need to learn that, you know, this is where your eggs come from, this is where your gallon of milk comes from, this is where your meat comes from, and your bread, and they need to be educated on that.
I think they say that most kids are 3 to 4 generations removed from the farm, so they have no idea what farmers do in order to produce sustainable food, fiber, and fuel. So I think it's important to teach that in the classroom because it's in a very short time, those will be the people that will be voting on legislation, making decisions, et cetera, that directly affect farming. So it's important to teach that in the classroom.
Well, a lot of kids, they don't know where the milk comes from a carton out of the grocery store, and same with bread, and I think it shows their interest. When I've attended 2 or 3 of the sessions with the Ag in the Classroom instructor, and they really get involved in it, get interested in it. We'll
We'll get to a point that people don't know where the corn comes for the chicken to lay the egg. We're getting more generations away from the farm. There's no grandma or grandpa or dad and mom to tell them.
Well, it's sad to say that the average person doesn't know where their food comes from today. They think that grocery stores and that's where it starts, and they don't realize how much work went into it to get it there. And maybe they'd be a little more sympathetic if they knew how much labor was involved and how much problems it was to get it on the shelf.
Well, I think agriculture it's an industry, I guess you could call it, or it's always been here. It's the grassroots of the country, I think, of any community, and it's what developed us in our area through the Midwest where it came in. That was agriculture, is why they come here to develop.
In Carmi's paper, it had a picture of a combine cutting beans last week, and the reporter said, combine shelling corn in White County. And I thought, my gosh, there's 6 foot difference in height, can't we tell?
A lot of representation for the farmers. And really, to me, growing up with it, it's been kind of like a family. I mean, everybody on the board, going to Chicago, I mean, you ain't gonna find a bad person in Farm Bureau. And I just really enjoy it. I mean, it's a great organization.
You know, I always found Farm Bureau's interest in legislation things, and I think that's important for all farmers. A lot of farmers don't realize how important it is, what the importance Farm Bureau is to them.
Most farmers don't realize that they can have a voice. And I think that's a big thing, that if they would actually get in on the start and follow a resolution all the way through, that they would really know what was going on, and it would help everybody.
We're a lot more involved on a bigger scale than originally when it started.
And an organization that goes to bat for the agriculture, for the farmers, and takes it to Springfield, Washington D.C. to work with, and I feel like Illinois Farm Bureau's got a good rapport with legislators.
We have insurance on irrigation systems, and if you're not a Farm Bureau member and buying insurance from country companies, it's tough to get insurance on things that are parked out in the field in 365 days a year and not really watched over. And so I think the fact that we can still buy insurance for things like that is ultimately due to Farm Bureau.
The resolutions committee, I think, as a president, you have to go through that process, because it's just, you don't realize how much the grassroots does following through and everything. I think it's just a great program.
We're working for them every day. And I mean, it's $75 a year. And all the incentives and all the perks, I mean, they're, in my opinion, you're a fool not to be one. So, yeah, I'd tell them that. I mean, I'd sit down and show them everything you can get, everything they do for you. I mean, it's a great organization.
Yeah, I couldn't even begin to speculate. I would assume it will have, and hopefully it'll have the same basic goals and that it has now, and strive to get the best policies, whatever that might be, for the local farmer.
With the trend towards locally produced food and urban gardens and all that, we might all become farmers again, and it will need to look like what it did 200 years ago in 100 years, and be a much more localized Farm Bureau.
Well, I can think back probably over the 50 years that I've been involved in it. It's changed, but yet really the basic goals of the Farm Bureau and the basic goals of its members and the services they need haven't changed that drastically that much, and I don't see it to change. Farming and agriculture will change, but as far as the services and the needs they will remain pretty constant, I think, over that period of time. So I think Farm Bureau is what it's offering. You know, it'll be on a different platform, maybe, but it'll still be the basic same general needs that it needs to offer.
In my 86 years, I saw us go from planting with a 2-row horse-drawn corn planter to shucking corn by hand to 40-foot combines and 16-row corn heads, semi-trucks. When they built the elevator in infield, the biggest thing down there then was wagons and pickup trucks. Today, it's all semis.
I guess on a personal level, though, I think back fondly on what I have gained from Farm Bureau. I think it's made me a better farmer. I think it's made me a better citizen. I think it's given me some great opportunities. It's also given me exposure to a number of other ag organizations, and because of that, I have had experiences, you know, on a local, state, national, even an international scale. So I think very fondly on my time that I spent in Farm Bureau.
Farmers my age are retiring. We've got young ones coming on, but they're gonna be farming 4, 5, 10 times what I farm. And but that means the membership's not there, so we don't have the numbers to take to Springfield, take to Washington DC, and say, hey, we've got X amount of members here we've got problems and help us out. Well, the numbers are not going to be there, so.
This is an important election year this year. People ought to weigh the situation and vote where to be the most advantage for the farmers. With this trying to phase out combustible engines and the oil industry and coal, I hate to think what we can depend on solar power and wind power and electric cars for agriculture.
You know, with all the advancements in technology, not just in agriculture, but in medicine and genetics, who knows, in 100 years we may not even need to eat food. So there may not be a need for Farm Bureau, or for farmers or Farm Bureau.
Oh my. Well, hopefully we're not a socialist economy at that point, and we still bicker over the price of corn and beans, and hopefully we're still raising corn and beans. I'm not that insightful that I can make even a guess on that.
Probably the answer is somewhere between those two extremes, and I would expect that Farm Bureau will be the premier ag organization in another 100 years. I
don't know if it's evolved as much as it has in the past 100. I couldn't even tell you. Everything will be electronic. I'd say we'll be sitting around tables, or they will be. I won't even be here by then, but they'll have some sort of touchpad deal, and everything will just be done. Very, very proud to be president on this 100th year. It's an honor that White County Farm Bureau has made it 100 years.